Welcome to the very first episode of Talking Culture, a show that talks about different cultures around the world. I'm your host Anandita, and with me we have a special guest this evening, Kripanjali. So, Miss Kripanjali, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Kripanjali, can you tell me something about yourself?
I am Kripanjali Acharya. I'm doing my undergrad degree in BA from RCSC, and I'm from a small town named Siliguri in West Bengal.
If you don't mind me asking, what language do you speak at home?
Some English, some Nepali.
You mentioned Nepali, so that means some part of your family is from Nepal?
Nope, it just means I'm an Indian Nepali. Different people ask me the same question, and when I tell them that nope, I'm not from Nepal, but I am a Nepali, they are, really confused. And it's a misconception, basically, that's been held over for years. And no one really knows who Indian Nepalis are.
Which is why this episode today focuses and talks about the story of Indian Nepalis. Ms. Kripanjali, let us talk a little about the history and who Indian Nepalis really are.
For the starters, I am an Indian Nepali. Indian Nepalis are any Nepali language speaking citizens in India. They are also referred to as Indian Gorkhas. And even with the lack of knowledge about who we really are, somehow Nepali as a language has found its way as one of the official languages of India now. Also, most people don't know about this, but Nepali culture has different communities. We have Rai, Tamang, Gurung, Baun, and etc. etc.
Also, I've been really curious about it ever since I attended my friend's Nepali wedding. So the bride had this beautiful vibrant print and the motis embroidered sari, and the guy with this fascinating cap and a knife around his waist. What was all that about?
So what the guy was wearing, we call it daura surwal in Nepali. Daura is a knee-length double-breasted shirt, and surwal is a loosely fitted trouser. And the fascinating cap that you're talking about, we call it dhaka topi in Nepali. It's a traditional hat. It represents national pride and integrity. And the knife around the waist, we call it kukuri. It's what the sword is for the Sikh community. Okay, it's a weapon to protect oneself from any sort of unexpected situation. And what the woman was wearing, we call it dhaka sari. Dhaka sari is made out of the dhaka fabric. It's meant to be, vibrant, filled with mirror work, and it's basically a symbol of femininity and grace, made by the Nepali people for the Nepali people.
And I've also read how most of these communities have their own food. Is that true?
Oh yes, that's definitely true.
Can you tell us more about it?
Okay, let's start with the Sherpa and Nivari cuisine. Sherpa cuisine is mostly eaten by people who are from the mountainous regions. They have the noodle soup, the famous noodle soup tuppa. Then we have churpi, it's a hard cheese made from yak's milk. Then we have Tibetan bread. And so my mom's Nivari, okay? And whenever we go to her place, they serve us this different Nivari dishes, okay? There's choila, it's a spicy grilled meat. Then we have bara, black lentil pancakes, and my favorite humari. So humari is a sweet rice dumpling filled with molasses, okay? And it's just like a fusion of flavor in your mouth. My day-to-day food is basically just dal, bhat and sabzi, like every other culture. We have the dal that's made up of different spices, cumin, coriander, and then we have a different type of achar made out of this red round chili called dallik achar. So basically it's just like dal, bhat and some dallik achar. That's perfect, okay? And different cultures have thalis, We have thakali, we call it thakali cuisine, okay? Thakali has different dishes. We have tido. Tido is like a traditional buckwheat, okay? And gundruk is fermented leafy greens. And we have sikarni. Sikarni is a yogurt dessert. And of course, the best thing about Thakali cuisine is the different variety of achars we get with it, it's the best thing. And of course, we have the momos, on a rainy day or a cold night. Just momos has to be the go-to. Momos are these dumplings. There is minced meat or vegetables based on whatever you want. And then we have it, we get it steamed or we get it fried, whatever you prefer, okay? And of course, the dallik or char goes with it.
Now let's move forward to the historical and political segment of the topic. Earlier, you told me about the lack of representation and the recognition of the Indian Nepalis, but as far as I know, a semi autonomous body called DGHC was formed by Subhash Singh and another in 2007 called GTA to administer the Darjeeling Hills. How successful was it?
So it began with DGHC. DGHC stands for Darjeeling Gorkha Hill Council. It was started by Subhash Singh. He started this DGHC for this supervision in 3 subdivisions, okay? Darjeeling, Kalimpong, Koshang and some regions of Siliguri. It was meant to administer the hills of Darjeeling Hills, okay? And then after he formed this party, he moved forward to raise the demand for the creation of a state called Gorkhaland. Gorkhaland within India to be carved out of the hills of Darjeeling. Now what happened is, the DGHC did not fulfill its goal of forming a new state. So DGHC fell down and the new rise of party came. That was Gorkha Jan Mukti Morcha, which is the GJM, that was headed by Bimal Guru. Now, they launched a second agitation for Gorkhaland state. Now, DGHC failed to do so, but GJM somehow succeeded. So what happened is, after 3 years of that agitation, right, the GJM reached an agreement within the state government to form a semi-autonomous body to again administer the Darjeeling Hills. Now what happened next is, the memorandum of agreement for GTA was signed on 18 July near Siliguri, and it was signed in the presence of Union Home Minister and Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee. Now, the issue arose when there was a difference in opinion between the opponents and proponents. So, the proponents of Gorkhaland argued that Gorkha community, which has a distinct cultural, linguistic and ethnic identity, they face marginalization and neglect within the state of West Bengal. And they are like, we want a different state because we want to preserve and promote our unique identity, You marginalize us, you do not give us our representation, so give us a different state and we will be by ourselves. Now the opponents were like, they cannot get a different separate state for themselves. They were like, our economy depends highly on tourism and tea plantations, and that resides in the Darjeeling Hills especially. And a separate state will affect these industries. Their revenue will be hampered. So they were like, no, we are not giving you a different state.
I cannot imagine being a part of something like this. That is really sad. Representation was one of the issues. Other than representation, what other issues do you think Indian Nepalis have to encounter?
Oh, I have a long list of that. Firstly, there's racial discrimination. They, especially in areas where they are part of minority, they face racial discrimination a lot. They might be subjected to derogatory slurs. There's stereotyping and, of course, unfair treatment based on physical appearance and ethnicity. Then there's the misconceptions about their customs, traditions, language. And most of it comes from a place of lack of understanding, limited knowledge, and cultural differences. Nepali Indians at one point was also viewed as outsiders, they were seen as trying to invade in India. But they've always been a part of India for generations. Now there's discrimination in education and employment. They might be denied opportunities for better jobs and educational prospects, and now that will limit their social mobility and economic growth. Nepali is also the native language for many Nepali Indians, but it is not understood or recognized. And even if it is, they will, assume that you are from Nepal and not an Indian. They do not consider you as an Indian. So now the language barrier also limits the number of people you talk and communicate with in different situations. They also struggle with their cultural identity. They feel the pressure to assimilate into this dominant culture, and they lose their unique traditions and heritage in that process. They also lack political representation. When they demanded for a different state, they weren't provided for it. And most of the times, their rights and interests are always mostly sidelined.
Another important event that marks the struggle of the Indian Nepalis was the Gorkhaland Strike 2017. Can you brief us about it?
From my personal experience, I think this was the second most difficult time of my life, other than the COVID time, of course. I spent 3 months without internet or any network, okay? And my mom was not even home. She was out of station for work, and I was unable to communicate with her. I couldn't even step out of the house for the rest of the 3 months. So how it started was, West Bengal government was like, we are introducing Bengali as a mandatory language in schools. So everyone has to follow this. Now, GJM, firstly, they hadn't gotten a different state for themselves, and now they are like, you're enforcing Bengali as one of the mandatory language. They strongly opposed this, and they, considered it as a threat to their linguistic and cultural identity because they have always been marginalized. Now, the protest quickly escalated into a strike, which lasted for over 3 months. The GJM first started by shutting down all the government offices, schools, and all the different establishments, and they were like, we are not letting any of these work in the normal state. Now what the West Bengal government did, on the other hand, was they responded to the strike by deploying additional security forces. Then there was lathi charge. They were like imposing strict measures to maintain law and order. And one of the most important things the West Bengal government did was suspending the internet services, because they are like, you're spreading rumors, none of that thing is happening around, and you're like just spreading rumors, spreading fake news, and this is not allowed. Now, what happens next is, efforts were made to resolve the situation through dialogue, but talks between the West Bengal government and GJM resulted in no conclusion. It was only when the GJM had a discussion with the central government that they called off the strike in September 2017. So this strike was a 102-day long hunger strike.
Do you have any particular incident that strikes your mind as you talk about these challenges?
I personally have faced racial discrimination in different situations. I have been nicknamed Momo, and when I try to stand up for myself, they're like, you know what, shut up and go make momos. And especially in a place where I was a minority, it was very difficult to adapt and gel up with people, because they had a perception about me. They had several misconceptions in fact, about Nepalis. So they always viewed me from that perspective. One of the incidents that's still stuck to my mind is when I was told to go back to Nepal. There was some sort of discussion, and they were like, they didn't have any logical argument, and they're like, please go back to Nepal, don't talk here, you don't have any right to talk here. And honestly, I don't think I've processed that. I still don't know how to process that.
That must have been really difficult for you. I'm really sorry about all of it. So, before we conclude and end this session, is there anything else you'd like to tell or want the audience to know?
I don't know. Maybe don't be too quick to judge, and let people unravel themselves in the span of time.
Okay then. Thank you for tuning with us today. It has been a lovely and informative session with Ms. Kripanjali. We hope now we know who Nepali Indians really are, and most importantly, they are Indian and don't only eat momos as their staple food. Join us for more such contents in the next episode, and don't forget to like and subscribe to our podcast, Talking Culture. Thank you.